Afternoon. My name is Sheila Lamb, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia Small Business Development Center is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 26 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one advising services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, Franchising 101, Starting a Business Through a Franchise, is presented by the Virginia SBDC Network with FranNet of Virginia and DC. Please join us for the follow-up to this session, Franchising 2, Trends, Opportunities, and Obstacles, next Wednesday, July 8th, and I'll drop that registration link into the chat momentarily. We are recording today's presentation and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the expected large number of participants, everyone's microphone is muted and the chat feature is turned off. But if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box and we will adjust them at the end of the session, time permitting. We have also enabled the live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your own meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Heather Rosen, President of FranNet of Virginia and DC. Heather is a franchise specialist from longtime SBDC resource partner and the creator of the SBDC's FranFit program, FranNet. Heather began her career as a lawyer, advising businesses on contractual matters and litigation strategy, and then ran marketing and business development teams for large international law firms. In 2009, she left legal services to go into business for herself through a franchise. Now the owner of two franchises, Heather conducts franchise education workshops for the Virginia SBDC and several other organizations, provides coaching on how to make the transition from employee to entrepreneur, and offers guidance to people researching full-time active, semi-passive, or large-scale area development franchise opportunities. Please join me in welcoming Heather Rosen.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Sheila. Good afternoon, everyone. If you are not hearing me or not seeing the presentation, please let us know by putting that into the chat or Q&A. Also, if you have questions, we will get to those, at the end of the program. I want to make sure to get through the material today, but I will address your questions at the end. And so, as Sheila was saying, I've been advising people who are looking to go into business safely and predictably since 2009, which is when I went into business safely and predictably for the first time through a franchise. Franchises they can be great. They can be a shortcut to profitability because you're starting a business with a group of people who have already done this many times before. They know exactly what to do, when to do it. And you can figure out, if you know what questions to ask, how long it takes to make money and how much money people typically make. That being said, going into business through a franchise is not for everyone. And so, one of the things that you're going to hear today is there are a couple of ways to go into business. Franchise is one. It is the best way for some people to go into it, but not the best way for other people. And so hopefully after this presentation, you'll be able to figure out whether this is something that could be for you. And if so, what a next step would be to figure out which franchise might make the most sense for you. But my approach to this has always been about evidence. One of the things that drew me to the franchise space 16 years ago was the fact that when you research a franchise opportunity, it is the only type of business that you could research where you're going to get to facts. If you know what you're doing, which you will at the end of this webinar, you won't just have to rely on gut feeling, whether there's something is, going to work or not, or the promises made by someone who is selling their business and hoping that you will write them a check. There's actually facts here where you can figure out whether or not a particular franchise is gonna be right for you. That was a draw because my entire career has been about fact finding and research, and the business side of it in particular. So, and this is a QR code here if you want to hear about more webinars that I do and read some of the articles that I've written on the topic. That's where you would scan. For the last 16 years, I've been working through a company called FranNet, which is the oldest franchise consulting company out there. We've always said in North America, but I don't know that there's an older one outside of North America. Um, so when I left working for law firms and I wanted to go with a company that had been in the franchise space, which I had not been in, I'd not been in the franchise space 16 years ago. I wanted to affiliate with the most knowledgeable, the most experienced, also the most respected. And this is the only company, FranNet is the only company that, as you heard from Sheila, does programs with pretty much all of the US government funded agencies. And so I affiliated with them. I've renewed my agreement with them multiple times. They're still the best in terms of getting me the research that I need to be a knowledgeable consultant when I'm talking to people who are trying to figure out which business to go into. And my day job is to do this kind of these one-on-one consultations. The cost of doing a one-on-one consultation is free. There's no charge because the franchises view me almost like a recruiter for them. So I'm using data from the research that FranNet does to figure out which businesses are actually successful, and then using FranNet's tools to help me figure out, and then my own skills to figure out what is going to work, what kind of business is going to work for an individual who's trying to find a great business. Because it's not just enough to find a great business. There's no one size fits all franchise. And so part of this is finding a great business, but also finding a business that you specifically are going to succeed in and that will make enough money for you and give you the lifestyle that we want, which I'm going to talk more about during this seminar. So, getting into the topics, I want to start actually by asking you to take a step back and to start to define what you're hoping to get out of business ownership in general. What is it? It's going to be different for everybody. So before you figure out which business, you have to figure out what you're hoping to achieve with the business. Then we'll start talking about whether business ownership as an independent makes sense versus buying somebody else's independent business or buying somebody else's franchise business that they've started already versus starting from scratch with a franchise. What, pros and cons of each. There's no right answer. It's just different for different people. And then I'm going to talk briefly about, well, what are we talking about with franchises? Because people typically only think about fast food businesses, and there's so much more out there, including a bunch of businesses that you can literally run from a laptop, wherever that laptop might be with you. And then we'll start getting more into, different features that you want to kind of weigh against each other to figure out, again, what's the best option for you. I'm going to talk about some pitfalls, mistakes that people typically make when they're looking for their business, researching options. I'll talk about the cost differences. There's a huge cost variance with franchises, with retail and hotels, specifically food franchises and hotels being the most expensive types of businesses. And I'm going to show you what the range looks like, and help you understand why there are different costs with different types of businesses. I'll also tell you about how people typically fund their business. And then, as I said before, how would you get started? So this is the part where I ask you to take a step back. And before you start thinking about this versus that business, start thinking about why you're here, why you're thinking about starting a business at this point in your life, at this point in your career. What are you hoping for? Everybody who I've ever talked to um, talks about money. They're all hoping to be profitable. That's the easy part. But the other thing is you have options. I mean, you could do a lot of things there's a lot of jobs that you could get, whether they're good jobs or bad jobs. There are other ways to make money too. And so you really want to ask, um, what is it about making money that I don't think I can find in a job that I could potentially get, and that I have an option of taking this job? Jobs today are a lot of them are paying a lot less than they did a year ago because there are less jobs available. So it's a seller's market. Employers are changing the salaries that are being offered right now because they can, because there's more people who will take a lower salary. So money is part of it. Maybe you can't make as much money as you could before, and maybe that's your reason for going into business. But I'm also going to suggest that you look for a business where it actually makes your life better, just as you would if you were looking at a couple of different job options. You might have option one where you're making more money, but there's something else about the job that isn't going to work for you. It's going to make things a lot more difficult for you and your family. And so some people will take the lower salary because it gives them a better lifestyle. And I really think you should factor that into this equation too when trying to figure out which business, because unlike jobs, you're going to have a lot of options to look at. So you might as well start off by defining what the home run would look like or be like. Okay. So I call this a success pyramid. I mean, everybody says if you ask them what they're hoping to achieve with a business, and they will say some version of, I want to be successful. But that is a very personal definition. Everybody's going to have a different definition of what success would be. When would they be successful? Um, and the things that you're seeing here are in different colors, red versus orange for a reason. The reason is the red things are critical things that if you find that you are just not in control and your job is constantly being changed or threatened, that is a reason that people will go into business. They'll say, I've had enough. This is causing me a lot of stress and anxiety, and I don't know if I can make any future plans because I have no idea if I'm even going to have a job. That is a reason that people will say, enough is enough, I'm going to start a business. Financial security, if you are a contractor who is going from, short contract to short contract, if you are in a position where you are commission based and you, again, have no idea how to rely on some amount of money that you're going to be getting, you're feeling financially insecure, that is a reason that people will say, enough is enough. I'm going to go into business for myself. If you've been part of a layoff recently or in the past, and I talk to people who they've been laid off recently, and this is not the first time. It is so incredibly stressful to be part of a layoff, even if it was not your fault, even if it's part of cutbacks. It can be for a lot of people, even though, again, it might be through no fault of theirs, it can be humiliating. Tough enough to tell your family, hey, I've lost my job, but then you have to tell friends, I've lost my job. And again, even though it's part of a bigger cutback, people start to look at you like, maybe you weren't the strongest player. Maybe they would have found something else for you. And people will say, that's it, enough is enough, no more layoffs. And then just not making enough money with the costs of pretty much everything having gone up, continuing to go up. A lot of people are saying, we're not going to make it. Well, my salary used to be a good salary. And now we're living hand to mouth and, paycheck to paycheck. And we're never going to be able to have nicer things. We're just, we're not able to afford even a good steak anymore, uh, more than once a year, kind of like the old days, right? Where a steak dinner used to be unaffordable. It wasn't like that, but now it is for a lot of families, most families, I would say right now. And people say, enough is enough. I deserve nice things. My kids, my spouse, they deserve nicer things. We all work hard. We deserve nicer trips and we deserve a bigger house. We need more room. And they just say we got to do something about it. We can't stay on the path that we were on, that I can as an income provider for the family. I can't stay on the same path that I was on, or else things will never change. These are all very compelling reasons, such that when people go into business, and this was the reason or one of the reasons that they went and finally did this thing, they will stick with it until it works. And you can pick a franchise so that you know it will work. You just have to, but these kinds of reasons will keep you extremely motivated to keep at it, keep it going until you're back and eventually you've surpassed your previous salary. On the other hand, the things here in Orange are just not as motivating. People who say, fulfillment. I'm never going to be fulfilled unless I live out my childhood dream of having a business. Not motivating enough. Um, Not liking your boss, believe it or not, is also not motivating enough because bosses leave, they're fired, they move to other sides of the other parts of the company, they retire, and a lot of people just they don't even interact with their boss every day, and so that's really not enough to really keep you motivated once you've actually started your business. Flexibility is a question mark. Flexibility may or may not be motivating enough. It depends why you need flexibility. If it's I just want to be able to travel, I just want to be able to work from home, it's really nice. That's not really motivating enough. However, if you are the primary person in charge of keeping your special needs child or your parent who now has health needs safe, that could be extremely motivating, especially when you find out that your employer, who is a really big, maybe at one point was a really big advocate and supporter of you, isn't really that supportive anymore because they don't like the fact that you're missing meetings because you have to take care of somebody. So that can be extremely motivating for somebody. But the point of this slide is find a time to launch when you have something that's going to be a real motivator, because that's going to keep you going through the first year or two where you might be making money, but it's going to be less consistent and all the fears are going to come in and say, oh, maybe I picked the wrong business. This is going to keep you focused on the outcome of actually getting your business built up enough so that you see a pattern, you see more consistent money coming in. Okay, so I think that's really important. I also want to just say there's a lot of change, whether you're in favor of them or not in favor of all of the changes that we've been through recently. Change is not typically good for business. And there are a lot of people right now who are not going into business because they're worried about, what if oil prices go up more? What if um, salaries go up again? What if rents keep going up? Rent has been extremely high, has been going up since COVID. And what if people, lose their jobs? More people lose their jobs. That fear is going to keep people from moving forward. And the truth is, there's always change. There's just more of it right now. And also, change creates opportunities. We know some of the names of companies that are making billions of dollars off of the changes that are happening. Why aren't you one of them? So don't, and my point is that don't let that stop you. Business ownership might not be the right thing for you. Franchise might not be the right way for you to go into business, but do not let the fear of changes and how that may impact you stop you if you have a, circumstance that is a real reason to actually go into business. And with a franchise, um, if you can be happy as a franchisee, you have a team of people and colleagues who are working with you through the change. So you don't even have to come up with all of the answers and pivots yourself. Okay. Franchises were the first ones to make changes during the pandemic. Most of the businesses that closed during the pandemic were independent businesses, not franchises, because franchises were able to test things quicker, put their heads together, and that word pivot quicker than most independent businesses. Um, so if you're still in this, I haven't lost you. How do you go into business? What makes sense for you? Different people for different types of businesses. Overall, the choices are start yourself from scratch, buy somebody else's business, whether it's an independent business for sale. You might have seen listings on Biz Buy Sell. Franchises also get sold on Biz Buy Sell. People start a business, they have a contract with the franchise, it's still their business. And if things go well or if they don't go well, they sell it. With a franchise, when you sell your franchise, the franchisor is happy to have you sell it to somebody who can do what you were able to do, maybe somebody who is even more skilled at running the business. That's a great win for the franchise. They will help your buyer transition, bring them up to speed as quickly as possible because the royalty keeps them motivated to keep helping with the transition. They will also sometimes actually find you your buyer. There are a lot of franchises have resale programs where they will contact the broker groups and say, hey, we've got a great resale if you've got somebody who's looking, a seeker, in this particular zip code. So buying an existing business, whether it's a franchise or not, is an option. And then starting a franchise, buying the rights to start a franchise and using the franchise corporate office to help you open is another option. So I'm going to go through pros and cons of each. Starting from scratch is for people who they just want to do it themselves. They're not particularly coachable. They don't ever want to be told, no, you can't do it that way. This is the way they have to do it. I mean, this is starting a business from scratch is honestly the best way for somebody who is very independent. We used to call them classic entrepreneurs, the disruptors, the people who, they're never going to be satisfied until their picture is on the cover of Fortune magazine. They're in total control. They make all the decisions. They don't pay a franchise for help. They're going to pay their employees for help. They're going to pay contractors, but they don't want anyone telling them what to do. But the downside is these businesses almost always take much, much longer to be in the black. And that's because unless the person starting the business has already run this type of business before, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to have to create the systems. They can go to the SBDC for help, but they're going to have to find somebody who works for the SBDC who ran this exact kind of business successfully to get all of the answers. They're going to get some help, but there's still going to be a lot of things that they're going to test out, and the likelihood is that they're going to make some mistakes. Also, if you go to a bank to get funding for your independent business, the bank knows what the failure rates look like. And it's very unlikely that you're going to get a loan from a bank. They don't believe you're going to make it. And if you do make it, when I used to do this program in person, I used to go around the room and ask people, do you know anybody who started an independent business? And if they raised their hand, I said, do you know them very well? It was usually a parent or a sibling, maybe, usually a parent. I would say, how long did it take for them to make enough money from the business so that they could actually, pay bills? And the lowest number I heard was 10 years. I think that's about right. I think 10 years, unless you've already run a business before and you're taking your customers from the business you ran and putting them into a new business, it's going to take at least 10 years. And that is part of the reason why there's such a high failure rate is that most people, if you have kids, if you have a mortgage, if you have obligations, you're not going to be able to hang in there for 10 years. You're going to have to go get a job. And so these businesses a lot of them close, at least 50%, if not more, just don't make it. But again, if you are somebody who has a book of business already, I mean, from my previous job as a lawyer, we used to have partners from the law firm who would leave the firm, hang out their own shingle, and they would bring some of their clients with them. Now, you can't do that if you have a non-compete. I don't know how that worked for them, but some of their clients did come with them. And they knew how to bill because they did it for the law firm. They knew, that they needed a secretary or assistant. They needed maybe a paralegal. They knew what the setup looked like. Maybe they weren't involved in the lease discussions for the space when they worked for a law firm, but pretty much every aspect of the business they already knew how to run and bill. And probably if they got to partner level, they probably also knew how to generate business. But if they didn't have that, they also would fail because the practicing law is a technical skill. If you come from an industry, a job, your professional background, and you have the ability to deliver a product or service, or you just did the sales piece, you don't know how to run the business. You only know one piece of it, and the rest of it you're still going to have to figure out. And it'll probably, again, if you have any obligations to banks or your family or paying for things, you're probably not going to be able to hang in there and make it. You're probably going to have to go back and the dream is gone. You've got to go back and just get a job with a paycheck again. Okay, so this is the pros and cons of that. Pros and cons of buying somebody else's business. Predictability is a pro because you're gonna be able to ask them for their books and records. Um, the bank is also going to feel a little bit better if you go to a bank for a loan to buy the business. You will feel better because you walk into a location maybe and they hand you the keys and they hand you they set you up with the marketing team that they use, et cetera, et cetera. You've got some employees. um, some of the systems might be in place and the owner themselves might offer you a deal where, hey, you don't even need to go to the bank. I'll take back a note, just pay this and pay back the rest of the amount that you're purchasing, um, just over time, or maybe in a defined amount of time. And that might sound great. Problem is, when you buy somebody's business, you are a buyer and they are a seller, and they are not obligated to tell you why they're selling. Now, you're going to ask them that probably, and they're going to have an answer for you. But your answer is going to be some form of, it's been an awesome business. I've done it for a long time. Um, we just want to do something else, or we have to move, or my wife's mother is sick. We have to go and take care of her, or I'm having a health issue, or my spouse is having a health. It's going to be some form of answer that doesn't talk at all about what's actually going on with the business. And I'm going to tell you that probably 95% of the businesses that are for sale, there's a problem with the business. They're not required to tell you what that is. And so you have to be a sleuth when you're investigating businesses for sale, okay? Um, you're going to have to figure out what the real cash flow is. And if it's a business that accepts cash, it's even harder because a lot of business owners hide cash. And that's obviously illegal, but it happens. I've talked to people who are on the brink of buying a restaurant and their CPA went through the books and records and said, I don't really understand what this payment is. And they figured out that it was a payment to the immigration officer to keep it quiet that some of their employees were illegals because only an illegal would work for the kind of wages that they could actually afford to pay. You don't want that business, obviously, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on with businesses. They have to do it to stay afloat, but they know that the walls are closing in and this is not sustainable. And let's go and try to find somebody else to buy this business and get rid of this headache. This is a common theme. Um, and then, legally too, as business owners, there's a lot of tax deductions that you can take that you cannot take when you are a W-2 employee. And so there are a lot of ways to legally, I don't want to say hide cash, let's say move cash to pension funds, to 401k plans that you can control, where you don't have to pay taxes on these things. You could also write off a lot more expenses. You could also, my understanding is that you can hire your kids, and pay them a salary and reduce your tax liability that way. Um, Offer your kids a college tuition plan as employees, um, write off the college tuition. I mean, there's a lot of write-offs that are not available to employees that you can take as a business owner. So when you're starting to piece together the books of the record and of the business and try to figure out how much it makes, you have to add all these back, and then you're starting to think, I mean, gee, this owner wrote off both of their cars, the owner's car and their husband's car, maybe. Okay, I get that they didn't maybe really have to, but do I need a vehicle? Maybe I do. And so it's not easy, is what I'm trying to say. And the seller is going to present the most favorable picture to you because they want you to buy. And you have to figure out how much business, what are they not telling me, and how much money this business actually makes. Also, don't forget that your employees can leave. A lot of employees, they don't like change. Maybe they liked the previous owner. They don't really know how you're going to treat them. Maybe there was actually a better salary offer. They could go work for one of your competitors. Maybe they're okay doing that. They weren't going to do it to the seller, but they don't know you. And so at this point, maybe that's their sign that it's time to leave. Now think about a business where somebody sells you the business saying, "Oh, you barely have to be there. The employees pretty much run this place on their own, but your employees leave and they go to a competitor." So it's not what you're going to be presented with, and you have to figure out what you're really, really getting. Also, if you're using a loan, you're getting a loan to buy the business. Don't forget, when you're trying to figure out what your net profits look like, to factor in the amount that you're going to be paying the bank every month. If the seller of the business didn't have any debt and you're going in with debt, it's going to be a different number. Their number is going to be different than yours. And then owners also, you can write an agreement, an asset purchase agreement that says, seller, we are going to pay you as a consultant to stay on to help us transition customers and things over to us for the next 3 months or so, like that. But at some point, that person or that couple or that group of people, they're going to be gone. They're going to be not picking up your calls. And usually that happens very shortly after they get the last dollar that you owe them for the business. So, what kind of and even if they're there, even if they're helping with the transition, I remember from college, not all of my professors were good teachers. Some of them were there because of the prestigious research that they did, right? So, what kind of training you're getting? Are you really going to get up to speed? And I will say too that when you're buying somebody else's business, you don't just want to get up to speed because you're going to prepay If the business is profitable, you're going to prepay their profits. They're going to sell the business to you. You may have heard of multiples. They're going to sell to you for some multiple of their future profits. So really, you're looking for a business that makes enough money or close to it that you can make even more profitable in the next couple of years. Otherwise, you've just prepaid for money that you're going to be getting in. So now, the reality is you're really not profitable for 3 years because you've just paid the business seller for the profits that you're getting in now. So this is pros and cons. I mean, when franchises get bought and sold, it's the same pros and cons with a couple of exceptions, okay? First of all, you don't just have to deal with a seller who's promising you the world, telling you that everything is great. When you research a franchise, whether it's a new territory or a franchise for sale, you're going to work with a franchise development person who's trying to give you a reality check because they're going to give you the training. They're going to bring you up to speed and they're going to want to tell you the pros and the cons so that they get somebody who actually can perform in this territory. Um, they also will let you talk to any of their other franchisees. So you don't just, you're going to get a more balanced version of how the business does, what the problems, what the challenges are, so that you can make sure that that's not going to be something that's going to hurt you. Who really does well. You still are going to want to talk to people who are successful in the business to make sure that you feel like you're like at least some of them. And these are people who don't have a completely different set of skills than you. And that, so that's a big difference. There's more information you can get. And the training, as I said, comes from the franchise itself. And also, I mean, the owner of the business, the seller might also try to help you, but that person may have been following the playbook that they taught them 10 years ago. And, the people who are starting fresh in the franchise might be doing a lot better because, as business owners, we get settled in our ways. If it works, don't break it. Oh no, if it ain't broken, don't fix it, right? Sorry. So, as a business owner, we tend to repeat our processes as long as they're working. And, if the franchise headquarters has a new marketing program, we might not buy into it because we have enough clients already. But if you go through the new training, the current training from the franchise, you might be, taught about a marketing program that's going to get you a lot more clients, customers, very quickly. So the training is not just proven training, but it actually might give you help more so than the person selling their business would have been able to help or is able to help you. Okay, so let's talk about franchises because, like I said, um, there's pros and cons to franchises too. So let's start with the cons because I think this is one of the biggest common threads with franchises is the first bullet that you see here. You must follow the system to be successful. There are going to be limited choices. There are going to be times that the franchisor says, you can't do that when you're operating under our brand, our trademark. Um, there are some people who are just not system followers. Now, there's there are levels of system followers. And this is something that I talk to people about. Actually, the assessment tool that we use gives us some clues with this. How much of a system, are you a system follower at all? And if you aren't at all, you should not go into business through a franchise, period. If you want to disrupt markets versus let your franchisor disrupt markets, go and do it by yourself. You're going to be very unhappy in a franchise. But like I said, there's a continuum. There's people who will follow any rule, any suggestion. They just want a playbook. There are people who won't follow any rule, and then there's the in between. And when you're researching different franchises, trying to figure out which is the best one for me, it's probably going to be something in between the two extremes. And then we have to figure out how much are you going to follow? How much creativity do you need versus you're willing to follow a playbook? Okay, that is a big part of your success. a big determinant as to how successful you're going to be in a franchise. You might have person A be uh, extremely successful in something like a McDonald's, which is extremely rule based. Every probably minute of your day is carved out. They're going to tell you this is what you have to do, have to do, have to do. Very little creativity. You have successful people in McDonald's, but not everybody is successful. There are a lot of people that will not be successful, which is why McDonald's makes you, and a lot of food franchises, the established ones, will make you actually be an employee first. They want to observe you to make sure you are that level of system follower before they will offer you a franchise. Okay. Another thing is most franchises have in the contract that they give you annual sales goals. You will see this if you are getting exclusive rights to operate in a specific geographic area. So you have to be okay with that. I mean, franchises are um, if you have exclusive rights, I will say, then your franchise is not a hobby. You're going to have to hit those numbers, exceed those numbers, hopefully, or else they could pull back your exclusive rights. They have to make sure that the revenue that you're generating, which their royalty is based off of, allows them to meet their own operating expenses. So if there's exclusive rights, there's going to be something in the contract that says, but this is contingent on exclusivity is contingent on your hitting these numbers. And what you have to do when you're researching franchises is talk to other franchisees and find out what you would actually have to do in order to hit those numbers. And what you should be hearing is some version of you just got to follow the system. You will hit those numbers. We all hit those numbers as long as we're doing the things that they tell us to do. That's it. Very achievable. And what the consequences to not hitting those numbers, they don't typically kick in right away because the franchisor realistically doesn't know if you're going to hit numbers in year one, year two, year three. But after, a certain period of time, if you're nowhere near those minimums, that's where you might have a discussion with their franchisor that says, hey, if you don't hit this number by this deadline, we're going to pull back your exclusivity or shrink your territory that is exclusive territory to you. So it is for somebody who is focused, who is serious. It's one of the reasons that I leave that slide in about do you have enough that's going to motivate you? It's not rocket science usually. It doesn't take any extraordinary skill. But you should have something that's going to motivate you to keep at it. And doesn't have to be 60 hours a week. A lot of franchisees spend, 40, 50 hours a week. Sometimes it's a lot less, but you have to do it. You can't sit on your couch and say, why did I lose my territory when you weren't actually working the business for a long period of time. Another disadvantage, sometimes people don't pick franchises because there is a one-time franchise fee, and there are royalties. You're paying other people for the services that they're providing. And some people, they just don't want to do that. Um, but here's what I say to that. What I say is, if the franchise can make you profitable a lot quicker, and it's going to happen because the franchisees that you talk to tell you this is what happens when you follow the system, it will easily justify a franchise fee. One way to look at it, think about if you were changing careers, which, being a business owner is going to be at least, it's going to be your new career, or maybe, maybe it's part-time. There are some franchises that people run part-time, but this is a new career for you. So think of it as if you were changing careers. You had to go back to school to get a degree or a certificate. That it's, it could be similar to 1 year of a college tuition or the cost of a certificate. I mean, I look at executive MBA programs, they're usually significantly more than a franchise fee, but you need that training in order to get ahead. Um, the royalties are ongoing. That is when something's a franchise, if there's a royalty built into it. The royalty pays the salaries of all the people who are teaching you. Well, no, the franchise fee pays the salaries of all the people who are training, hand-holding, mentoring you. And it pays part of the recruiting fee because they had to find you and go through this process with you. They have staff for that too. The royalty pays the salaries of the people who are now going to be working for you to help you do business. And of course, there's profit built into it. Franchises are for profit, they're not for profit. So there has to be a profit motivator for the people who run the business. But the people who they have to hire to help you find more clients, help, I'm going to talk about this in a minute. There's a lot of services that you get, and it's a service fee. And when you're looking at franchise options, what I would say is look at the royalty that the other franchisees pay, try to figure out what you would pay employees or contractors to perform the same services. And usually the amount that you would pay is a lot higher because you're sharing these services, these resources with your colleagues, the other franchisees. So usually the royalty is actually a good deal when you look at everything you're getting. And now some people will say, well, why couldn't I just do that? I don't have to pay anybody. And the answer is, as a business owner, you actually want to focus on the core functions of the business, sales and or marketing and or management. I mean, whatever your particular business requires, what you're good at is what you should be spending 90% of your time doing. You should be looking to outsource or assign the rest of the business functions to somebody else. So even though you can do the books of the business, you can be the CFO, you can also be the marketing, you could also be customer service, you could also help, be involved in building referral relationships. As a business owner, you absolutely should not be doing everything. So one way or another, in order to be successful, other people have to do it. Now you have a franchise where they're doing a lot of these things, and that's where your royalty goes. Protected territories, I have two franchises. One has protected territories, one of them does not. There are pros and cons to both. If you are somebody who wants to be able to do business wherever you find business, then protected territories is a disadvantage because you won't be able to do business everywhere. But if you think you're going to do most of your business, right around where you live, protected territories is a good thing, and you're going to get more best practices sharing from your colleagues if you have protected territories, generally speaking. But for people who want to grow a business, nationally or take it overseas, you're not going to be able to do that with a protected territory franchise. So, move away from that, look at businesses like a lot of the business to business franchises. Franchise is a business, their customer is other businesses exclusively. Those typically don't have protected territories because some of your customers are going to have locations in different zip codes. So that might be something to look at if you want to be able to do business anywhere. Use contacts that you have anywhere. It is a contract. You sign a contract, it's a commitment. You can get out of a contract. I've never seen a franchise make somebody stay in a contract. They really, it's too painful for them. If somebody wants to get out, typically almost, I'm going to say pretty much always you can get out of your contract, but there's going to be some steps that you have to take. Unlike if you start independently, you're going to have to come to some sort of a resolution. You might have to pay some fees to get out. It really just depends on the franchise. It depends, how much they need you to cooperate with them. Some franchise agreements will say what happens, but I would say typically the exit is negotiable because if they need you to help them, then you can negotiate less fees. But unlike being in business independently, where if I have a law firm, I have my own shingle up, I can decide next week I'm not a lawyer, I'm retiring. you have to take this additional step to get out of the contract with the franchise. Um, and the franchise problems are your problems. So, I get a lot of questions about the famous food franchises, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, etc. Subway sometimes, because this is what people know. This is what they see. They know that's a franchise. It doesn't look like it's that hard to run. They really have no, there's a lot involved in running a food franchise. Food franchises are going to be probably the most time intensive businesses you could run. Okay. And you don't think about this. This is a business where you literally can sell your customer something, they put it in their body and it can kill them. The liability for food franchises is really, really high. Okay. But the other thing that people don't think about is if you're going into business and the business is really well known, if it's a national brand that is open in most states, if something goes wrong in any of the franchise's locations, that's probably going to impact your business because it's going to make national news. And there are people who are going to decide they're not buying from you anymore because your company has problems, even though your company doesn't have problems. So you actually want to strike a balance between, you know, proven, maybe famous, but maybe not so famous because that itself, being famous, fame is actually a threat to your business. I would say your best bet is to find a franchise that has a proven, predictable business model that has good availability near you. That's better than a famous franchise. Because you don't have something happens in California to the franchisee there, it's not going to impact your business in Virginia. All right. Um, Now the advantages. So the reason the franchise model is really for a lot of people the best way to go is because it shortens the amount of time from startup to profitability. And that's because it's proven, the product is proven, the business system is proven, the brand may or may not be familiar. If it's not a familiar brand, a lot of franchises know how to make you a familiar brand in your territory, which is all you care about. You don't care that it's famous in California. You care that it's famous in the territory that you brought. They know how to make your brand well known in a very short amount of time. They have a marketing team that's going to support you and they're trained. They're going to support you from day one. When they get bigger, they have national relationships that's going to help you get customers that you did not find. They're going to show up in your inbox. Here's a customer who would like to talk to you. That business could be worth thousands of dollars just because you're part of the franchise. I've experienced this in both of my businesses. Um, Operations, you have an IT team. It's not you trying to fix things when there's a hack or when the systems go down, right? They have a IT team that takes care of that so that you as a business owner don't have to stop doing, when you have a cyber hack or something like that, it could really ruin your business for years to come. They have an IT team that makes sure that it doesn't happen or does everything possible that you can do to make sure that doesn't happen. Your customers' data isn't stolen, right? Um, you ever get the letter in the mail that says your customer, this company, they had a cyber hack and your data, your credit card information, your social security number might be have been compromised, and so et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The companies that you hear from are larger companies. It's probably also happened to small companies that you've done business with. The franchise is going to take care of things like that happen, and they're going to set you up with a good email address, a good website. They're going to refresh your website so that it still fits into the Google algorithm. You still come up on a Google search. That's all done for you. You don't have to worry about that as a business owner. They provide the training. It's not just initial training. A good franchise is going to provide ongoing training so that your business is still functioning at top level. You're following best practices, and you didn't have to research those best practices. Your franchise found it for you. Okay, it's a continuing relationship. We have meetings every year. I try to go to every single one of them if I can. One of my businesses actually has two meetings a year that they want me to go to. I don't have to, but they really want me because they want me to be at the top of my game as a business owner. My other franchise has a tech day. They have a luxury travel day. It's a travel business. My other business that I run with a partner. And they continually try to train me so that I'm able to make more money. That's the name of the game. They're incentivized because they're paid from my royalties that is based on my sales. So they give you all this training so that you can make more money. And you also have your colleagues who have, been in business longer than you if you're just starting. They're also helping you. They're also saying, you know, here's how I did it. Just the other day with my travel business, I have a client who wants to do a land tour in Iceland. I've been to Iceland multiple times, but she wants to know which tour companies are running, and also cruises are running trips that will allow her and her husband to see the solar eclipse. And so, first thing, we have access to hundreds of vendors, but the first thing I did is go on to our Facebook group and said, who are you sending, which vendors, which companies are your clients going to see the solar eclipse? And I got within 10 minutes, I had 5 answers. That's really, really valuable stuff. That saved me hours of research, right? The other thing is there's oversight. So franchises, as opposed to buying somebody else's business, when you in Virginia, if you live in Virginia, or if you are opening up a business in Virginia, you're going to get access to franchises that the Virginia Attorney General has this year said they're okay. We don't have any problem with them expanding in our state. We are a registration state in Virginia. You are going to be already, even before you talk to me with my filters, you're going to be looking at businesses where the state has said, yes, you can open up. We think this business is okay for the right person, but there's nothing wrong. There's no big red flags in the disclosure document that that business has filed in the Commonwealth. So that should give you some comfort for sure. But then again, you want to filter that more and make sure it's also really a good business and also the right business for you. But this is the thing. There's a lot more safety and certainty and a smaller path to profitability if you go into business through a franchise. So a franchise, as you've already started to hear, is not just food. It's any franchise where it's any business where there's a headquarters office. Now, of course, a lot of people today are remote, but they've got a team of people that are working for the franchise operators. That's you, the franchisee, and you are working for your customers. And the revenue stream going back to the headquarters office is the royalty. That's it. That's pretty much it. If you see something that operates that way, it's probably a franchise. And there are thousands of them. So you probably, if you've researched franchises, you've, come up with some ideas. You probably haven't even scratched the surface. There's over 350 different industries out there. Okay, that are where you find a franchise. They're not all going to be available near you. You might live in a town where you would love to open up a Chick-fil-A. Most likely in most towns in Virginia, either the rights are already owned by somebody else, or it's a town where Chick-fil-A doesn't think there's enough foot traffic to open one. They're not going to let you open one. So you have to find the right business that also has good availability. Certain states also require particular kinds of businesses to have a certain kind of license. It's not just a business license, but if you have, let's say, a home healthcare business, you're going to have to get licensed. You're going to have to get, as the owner, even though you're not providing the care, you're hiring caregivers, you're going to have a personal care license for your business. If you have any business that does any kind of construction or remediation of property, you're probably going to have to get a contractor's license. Now, the franchises, and you're going, well, I like this business, but I don't have that license, and my franchise or my state says that I'm going to need a year of experience to get that license. Sometimes you can still operate the business with the help of the franchise. Sometimes there are programs where one of the other franchisees can make you their employee or rent their license to you for a fee with some oversight to do it. But different states are different. So my point is that if you're looking for a business in any state, including Virginia, there are going to be some things that are different about different states. Not all franchises can even open in Virginia. They're not all going to be available near you. You really should work with somebody who knows your state and knows the in and outs, knows what questions to ask before. Because I've seen franchises take a franchise fee from people in Virginia where that franchise is not licensed in Virginia. They're not gonna be able to open up that business in Virginia, and the franchise says, "Hey, we didn't know. We didn't know that Virginia requires that. Work with somebody if you're getting advice who knows how to do this in Virginia." And then the rest of it, not all franchises have a good track record. Some of them are new, they have no track record. And then they're not all going to allow you to make the kind of money that you need to make as quickly as you need to make it. So you want to go looking for the right thing. And here's a formula that I put together, a checklist, if you will. Make sure that the franchise has a proven track record of making enough money for you. Make sure you can legally open it up where you want to open it up. Make sure it's available and it actually has good availability. I mean, just because you want to open up a franchise in Harrisonburg, um, that might be a B or C territory. Maybe that franchise, it's not such a good idea. Maybe there's a different franchise. Um, that works better in that market. So just because it's available doesn't necessarily mean that you want that. I mean, the franchise will do some sort of determination that that territory is viable, but if it's a young franchise, they might not really know how to do that determination. They really might not know what the demographics are that you should be looking for before you decide to open there. Um, but overall, look for a franchise where you're going to be selling a service or a product that either people or businesses or both need, not want, but need now and in the foreseeable future. That's your safe space, okay? And then you have to make sure that it's the right business for you, given what you would really need the business to do to be successful, to meet your needs, but also it's gonna give you the lifestyle that you want, where you're gonna be happy to stay in that business for years to come. Nobody wants you. We don't want you to get into business. We want you to get into business successfully. So let's find something for you where you're more likely than not to want to stay. And this is the job that you'll have until you decide to sell the business and retire. That's what we're looking for you. You might do it early. That's great. Take the proceeds, give it to your kids, take a great vacation, have money to live off of. Your financial advisor is going to be thrilled if you tell them that I think I can make $1 million or more from the sale of my business. Great, that's great. Different people need different things. Some people just want retirement income, but this is what I'm saying is you want to spend the time defining what success would be before you decide on the business. Um, Ask about how much experience the franchise has. Not all of them have a lot of experience. You want something that is simple enough for somebody like you to get up to speed and to operate the business. You want to make sure that every franchise is going to say, "We train you." I don't know of a franchise that doesn't offer training. But how good are they? Can they really train you to run this business successfully? And then what is the ongoing support like? Can you talk to the other franchisees and ask them, is the franchise good at helping you? Are they really helping you? Is it worth it? Name recognition, as I said before, think of it as, yes, but it's really a nice to have because franchises can help you create name recognition in your territory very quickly. Almost always, they can do that. You just need a good grand opening program. But do they have a real marketing team? Not just one person, not just the founder, certainly, which I've seen before. The founder is going to be everything, marketing, operations. No, they're not going to be able to do it. The founder is running another business. They have a business they've just franchised. They still have to maintain that business. And they're going to be involved in the recruiting function for your franchise. A real marketing team, a real operations team, IT, vendor relationships. When the franchise gets bigger, are they helping to put into place national partnerships, national relationships that you can get business from because they've created awareness of your business? So now you can walk right into Home Depot and say, I am CertaPro Painters. I'm going to have a desk here, and Costco is going to say, yeah, we know CertaPro. We know they're great. You wouldn't be able to do that as Joe's Painting. Okay. So what are they offering you? Not just the founder saying, yeah, I'll teach you how to do this, right? And then ask about a culture of teamwork, whether franchisees typically get along. As I said before, the franchises where there are not um, exclusive territories, you do find that franchisees don't tell you their best practices. They'll tell you some of it, but some of it they're not going to tell you because you could use that to get business. They could lose business if they share that with you. Um, Also, a franchise that has exclusive territory, if the territory is not delineated well, you're going to hear that there's infighting. So ask about the culture of teamwork within a franchise. There are lots of franchises where it really feels like a second family, where these become your friends, lifelong friends. You love going to conferences. It's like a family reunion, and people share and test and go on vacations together. It can be wonderful, but it could be horrible. You have to ask about this. Okay, so in terms of trends, I'm not going to have time to go through examples of industries, but you see it here. Here was what you're going to look for. You want to look for where you're looking for a franchise. Who does the franchise sell to? If it sells to the general population, if your franchise primarily appeals to either baby boomers or millennials, that's a really good thing. It doesn't have to, it certainly doesn't have to. It can be a niche thing that doesn't, that's not who their customers, but that is a safe space. That is, these are the two biggest population groups. And so there are certain things that these population groups need. And if you can provide that, you're going to be in really good shape. And here's some examples. Um, Essential services. Everybody needs to get some sort of a salon service, and whether it's cutting or hair removal or something. And these are repeat services. They're going to keep coming back. If you get your nails filled in or you get the gloss, means somebody's got to remove it and replace it because you want to maintain your clean professional look. But automotive repair, pet care, child care, all these things are essential services. These are safe spaces. And again, it doesn't mean that if you're not in one of these spaces, your business isn't going to do well, but there's a lot more certainty in these areas listed on the slide. In the B2B space, there are certain services and products that other businesses have to buy, no matter what. If you're construction, you have to either provide or tell your employees to get safety equipment, steel-toed boots, and and again, franchises provide these things. So that's why we're talking about them. Workspace rental businesses, I mean, if you are in a business where you meet with clients, they need, you're going to need to, they're not coming to your home. You don't want them coming to your home. You have to have conference space. And by the way, the SBDC rents some of this space, but franchises also rent some space. IT services. I mean, cost reduction businesses and staffing businesses. These are franchises that meet a need for other businesses all the time. There's never a time where they don't need this help. But think about what happens when companies are hurting. They're not hiring as many employees. Everybody or most people are on contract. Who finds those people? Staffing businesses. The phone that if you have put your resume on LinkedIn, you're probably hearing from a staffing company. You're probably not hearing from the employers, and most of those jobs are contract positions. That's a franchise. Cost reduction, businesses that help other businesses reduce their overhead so that they can stay afloat when their costs have come up, when some of their customers have gone away. That's a business that you can run from your laptop. Businesses always need this help. It is countercyclical to a recession economy. So there's that. There's businesses that do marketing, businesses that do advertising, janitorial. Every office that customers come into needs to be cleaned. That is a, near recession proof business unless nobody ever goes into an office again. But even then, you still need clean office space because at some point you're going to have to go back to an office. Um, so, think about a business that will thrive in any economic conditions. That's the safe space. Cost cutting, education. So if you have kids, you probably are not going to be finished, and you're working, you're probably not going to be finished with work when your kids come out of school. So a lot of parents need somewhere for their kids to go. Better yet, if they're getting education that will help them with their homework, that will help them get better at math or English. Even little kids, I mean, the after school programs where it's not just babysitting, but the kids are entertained and learning. A lot of the franchises are in this space. So that is also a safe space. Property repair, property improvement businesses always have business. There's always reasons that property needs to be repaired or improved. It's to move into a bigger space right now. If you're in a home, you have more kids, you're not, most people can't afford to do it. So if you have a home and you can add another bedroom or have your space reconfigured for another bedroom to accommodate your new child or kids who are saying, I don't want to share a room with my brother anymore. They will do it through a home improvement business, and the franchises are definitely, there's a lot of them in this space. These service businesses, there's been a lot of discussion recently about the service economy. Business schools are talking about it. Podcasters certainly are. Some of them call them the ugly service businesses. This is who's making money right now, and they've always do, because people who own property always need to fix or improve property. Um, and then we talked about the staffing companies. So, you have a lot of choices as a business owner. I mean, again, don't just settle for the first thing that you figured out seemed interesting. Some franchises you have to own multiple locations in order to draw a salary to support yourself. Just because you see somebody opening up 5 restaurants, that person might not be rich. That person might be just barely staying afloat because each restaurant that costs, $450,000 to open might only be netting $10,000 to $20,000 a year. So they need 5 locations. That doesn't necessarily mean you don't have to make the kind of investment that you would have to make to have 5 locations to have a salary that can support you. And that's kind of my niche is, typically I'm talking to people who are trying to find a business that can make enough money to support them. And some people, their skill set really isn't managing all of the people in 5 locations. Really, either if you've never managed anyone, or you maybe have only managed 1 or 2 other people, or just managed programs, or just managed projects, you probably don't want a franchise, where you have more than one. Maybe start with 1 location, maybe buy some rights so that you have room to grow. But, picking a franchise where you're going to need multiple locations, you might fail in that business just because you don't you're not a good manager, or you don't, maybe you can learn it, maybe you can take courses in it, which a lot of managers don't, by the way. They just feel like, yeah, I can figure this out. You might dislike it. That might be the worst part of your job as business owner is dealing with employees. So different businesses for different people. If you've managed a lot of people, if you liked that part of your job, a lot of people who were in the military, they loved helping young people grow. Great, then we can look at multiple unit models. But if that's not your background, the safe space is start with one location, but maybe with some extra licenses if you think you're going to want to grow and you want to make sure that nobody else buys up those rights. Um, Everybody wants the safety and security of well-established franchises. The longer they're in business, the more rules they have. So you have to balance that with your ability to follow rules. You might need something a little younger, that gives you more flexibility. So really those two bullet points are kind of tied together in a lot of cases. Um, Most franchises want you to start without a business and without another job. They want you to start as a full-time owner operator. There are some exceptions. But I've also seen franchises say, yeah, you can keep your job, no problem. They don't have anybody in the franchise who's actually done that and has survived. So you have to be careful that you actually have a proven business model as a semi-absentee owner. There's also this concept of regional area development. I'm not going to get too far into it, but for people who want to grow a really big business and they're saying, well, I've heard, you can only make X number of dollars with franchises. Look at regional and area development. It's almost like being a franchisor yourself. And then, you can work from home in some franchises. There's just no one size fits all. Here's an example of some of those categories where I have seen businesses successfully run where somebody starts at the same time that they have a job or other businesses. Just be careful, again, that they have a track record of somebody actually successfully doing it that way. Also, if you're doing it while you have a job, you better have a really flexible job. I mean, you're not going to get to decide all the time when you have to do work for your business. So make sure that, I would say, best case scenario is your job just cares about what you deliver. They don't care if you're, always in the meetings that they set. They don't need to know that you're actually working during certain hours. That's where you're going to get into trouble. A lot of people, or some people did this, shortly after COVID. They just said, yeah, I'm going to start a business now that I'm working from home. That got cracked down on, and most people are not working from home anymore. Or, they might have a hybrid situation, but again, you're not going to necessarily be able to pick the day that your business needs your attention. Okay. And you're going to find very, very few choices in the food business. You might have seen somebody who has other businesses and has a job and food franchise. I'm here to tell you, while you may be able to do that with a general manager, that's going to delay your break-even point. You're going to have a salary that you didn't need to have, and it might take you years before you could break even. So not really conducive to food. And if your business provides home health care or child care, it's the same thing. Those are very owner operator intensive businesses. Now, eventually, in food and these care businesses, you might have enough profit there, and you might have some employees that after working with them for 10 years, you can trust them and start handing them more responsibility. But you don't want to do that from day one in these businesses. You're exposed to too much liability there. So in your search, I mean, again, start off by identifying your financial goals, your lifestyle goals, how much time you want to be working or you can work, where you want to be working, where you don't want to be working, which hours and all that. Try to forward think if that's going to be different in 5, 10, 20 years. If you have kids who are at home in 5 years, they might be in college or out of college. And what kind of goals, lifestyle goals, and financial goals will you have at that point? You can, and then you try to match up the business to what you're hoping to achieve in those areas. Different businesses for people who come in with different skill sets. You don't need sales experience necessarily, but in some franchises you do. So, do a skills assessment and find a franchise where people like you with your professional background have been successful enough in the franchise before you say yes to it. Um, the employee factor, you don't even need to have employees. Some franchises start with no employees. Sometimes you can usually add employees if you want to, but you can start on your own with a laptop. But some people, the whole goal is to have employees that can start taking over responsibility. And if you have employees too, it's going to make your business more marketable when you're ready to sell because your buyer is going to want to see that the business can run without you because you're going to be extracting yourself from the business. So just understand your comfort with management and figure out if you're even looking for an employee for a business with employees or with more than one or two employees. A lot of times with my clients, we realize through our discussions, I say, you know what, based on what you're saying, I don't think we should look for something with more than one or two employees. How would your life be if you only had one or two employees? And they said, yes, that would be great, actually. You want to set a budget. When I talk to people, we talk about what's your do not exceed number, where even the best franchise that you love, it's going to be too expensive. You have to set a budget. You want to think about where the owners of these businesses actually work. You might care. You might not want to be in a mall or a strip mall, right? You might not want to be in an environment where you have to open. A lot of restaurants are like this. You have to be there to open at 6 a.m. and be back to close at 10 p.m. There's, slippery, greasy floors and pest control things that you have to do to make sure that the health inspector doesn't shut you down. What do you really want out of this business? What's the home run? We can look for it. You've got a lot of options. What hours are available is part of the goal to be able to hire your kids, is part of the goal to give your spouse a retirement job. Because if that's the case, you have to bring them into the discussion. How many locations do you want to manage? What kinds of customers do you want? A business customer is going to be a very different process working with that representative than it is working with a mom who is buying tutoring services for their son, right? So you want to take the time to interview franchisees. And with a franchise, you're going to get their disclosure document, which has everybody's names and phone numbers. And you want to talk to top people, middle people, a few bottom people to figure out who's doing well. That's going to be your biggest indicator of how you would do in this business. Don't lead with, this is the pitfalls, do not lead with, I am passionate about childcare. I am passionate about this pizza. I loved the pizza. You're going to run into a problem. You really should evaluate a business the same way you would evaluate a job. Okay, when you evaluate a job, does it pay enough money? Do I like the hours? Am I going to like the work? And is there enough room for growth? It's the same thing with a business. Your career is the CEO of a business. What the business does almost doesn't matter as long as you can get behind it. I mean, nobody's going to sell a product or service that they think rips people off or makes them sick, right? Nobody does that. I mean, nobody that I've ever talked to does that. They're looking for a good business, and a good business is going to be defined by what it does for you as the owner and maybe what it does for family members that you want to get involved in the business. You don't necessarily need industry experience. I think that the statistic was only 23% of franchisees are in a franchise where they had industry experience. And that's because the franchisor has the industry experience. You just need the skill set, the drive, the money, lining up with your goals. The industry experience will be brought to the table by the franchisor. They know the industry already. So you don't have to have that. You have to have enough money. You don't want to start a franchise with a pool of money that is too small. And when you research these franchises, you'll know, they know how much money you need to acquire a new franchise territory or to and to launch the business from that, or to acquire a franchise that somebody else has started and to get that up to speed. There's also a matchmaker program that some franchises actually will help you find an acquisition target that's not the franchise. They know that business is going to be sold for a good price. They've got some customers and it's going to be ripe for turnaround by plugging it into all of the franchise systems. They can sometimes help you actually find the acquisition target itself. And they'll know how much it'll take to turn it around. So there's not guessing and realizing, oh my gosh, I don't have enough marketing dollars. I guess I'm not going to have any customers anymore. You want to make sure that you have enough to get it going until the business can start covering its own expenses, and make sure you have enough time to run it. Fear is normal. Just because you're feeling nervous, it's not a sign that there's something wrong. Fear is really, just remember that fear is really normal when you're about to embark on something big. If you're buying a house, if you're, um, moving out of state, if you are buying a business. And it doesn't matter how many businesses you've bought before. Every single time you buy a new business or start a new business, if you're putting money into it, if there's some sort of commitment, you're going to say, what did I miss? Oh my gosh, what did I miss? So you've got to figure out a way to manage and reduce fear. It's through research, it's by talking to franchisees, making your decisions based on fact, based on what other people tell you who are not the seller of the business. Don't let fear drive your decisions. Now, people ask me this, how long should it take? If you've done all your diligence, it should take about 3 months, 2 to 3 months from the time that you pick your first set of businesses, if you know how to pick the right first set of businesses. So I help people do it in 2 to 3 months. If you're doing it on your own, you're probably going to end up chasing some businesses. You're going to get to the end of the process and say, hey, wait a minute, I didn't see this. And you're going to have to scrap that and go back. But we can, if you're open to some coaching, and again, it doesn't cost you. I mean, if you're open to some coaching, we can help you shorten that path, but it's still going to take you from the time we pick the first most logical businesses. It'll still take you 3 months. Maybe you can do it in two if you're really focused. Big cost variance in franchises, the restaurants that everybody seems to chase when they don't know enough about what's out there. These days, you probably can't open up a restaurant in Virginia for anywhere less than $350,000. Anything near Richmond, um, Fairfax County, anything near DC is going to be at least $450,000. And yes, that includes even a small subway because you need enough money to promote it. The franchise, you might have name recognition, but you have to make sure that people in your territory are constantly reminded that you're there, or else you're not going to have enough foot traffic and you're going to end up going out of business. So there's a huge cost range. I would say even if you think you found your franchise, I would urge you to take time to see what you might have missed that might be a lot less expensive and maybe also will require less headache, less time on your part. Like I said, it usually happens in the restaurant space. People get excited about being the next owner of a certain restaurant, and their life is the restaurant. Your family members are going to be coming in and working the restaurant because you're going to need the help, and you probably, honestly wouldn't see them until late at night if they weren't working in your business. It's very, very time intensive. So see what you missed is what I would say. But there's a lot of choices out there that are a lot more affordable than people think. You probably already know about the SBA loan program. If you start a business, it's going to be probably through the 7A program. You go to a bank for that. They work with the SBA, you work with the bank. You might not know that you could also fund a business other ways. You could take out a home equity line of credit, also known as a second mortgage. And people say, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to involve your home. You're gonna sign a personal guarantee with the SBA program too. So don't think your assets aren't going to be touched if you can't pay back your loan. You're going to be paying back that loan, whether it's SBA or a home equity line of credit. Home equity lines of credit have a lower interest rate, and you don't have the origination fee that you have with 7A. So it's something to look at. Also, a lot of my clients avoid loans completely. They don't want the debt because they don't want the first dollar every month, or it's going to be like much more than a dollar. They don't want the first payment every month to be to the bank. They want to start making money. So they will find their own assets. They'll roll over sometimes 401ks, IRAs, penalty free, interest free. It's not a loan, it's not a penalty situation, even if you are not retirement age yet. That's another way people do it. There are companies that specialize in these programs if you're interested in. Um, I don't have time to go into the whole thing. It's not my company, but I can connect you with that if you are interested. So here's what I'm going to say to you as far as next step. Figure out when you're ready. And what I mean by that is if you are committed to being in business within the next 6 months, if you know it's not going to be a retail, you want to start now. If you are pretty sure it's going to be some sort of restaurant or retail, you can wait until it's you're more like 12 to 18 months because it could take you a year just to find your space. But if you're pretty sure it's not going to be retail because of the cost or for some other reason, start looking now because it's going to take you, like I said, probably 3 months to do your diligence to find your business. And then, you know, you're going to start, your training, start marketing it. If you start today, you'll probably if it's not a retail business, if you start today, you can be in business somewhere between 3 and 6 months, more likely towards 6 months. So if you're ready to get to do this and you're saying, I want to be a business owner, I've got to make this happen, get your process started today. You're probably going to need at least $50,000 of your own money from somewhere. That could be a rollover situation if you are eligible for that, but you're never going to get 100% of the loan. So factor that in. If you're married, I would strongly recommend that you involve your partner in the what are we looking for discussions at the very beginning, not after you've wasted, and I say wasted because I've seen this happen. I know that's kind of a harsh word, but I've seen people spend months researching options. They find their franchise. They present this option to their partner or somebody who they're hoping to go to for funding, and that person says, nah, I'm not interested. No, we're not doing that. Scrap the entire plan, start from square one. So you want to involve them in discussions early. When I counsel people, I ask them to bring their partner if they are in a committed relationship. And also, if you're looking to go into business with a partner who is not your personal relationship partner, be very careful there because I've also seen partnerships kind of blow up. So, next steps, and I know Sheila is going to be on in a minute to tell me we've got to wrap things up. Please, there's a short evaluation form, and I think Sheila has one too. If you're thinking about doing this and not sure, I would say there is an entrepreneur profile assessment that we have. Take it, see what it says, and it's going to give you some clues. I go over these with people. You don't have to take up my offer to go over it. It's going to give you some clues, but there are certain things. I mean, if you're really serious about doing this, have a discussion with me. Let me tell you what you're reading when it says you're a thinker. It's going to be a description, but you're going to want to hear from me how that pertains to owning a business. All right, so here's some things to scan for the evaluation, for the entrepreneur profile, et cetera, et cetera. Let us help you by giving you good advice so that you are more likely than not, if you go into business, picking something that you're actually going to want to stick with for a long time to come. And that is the end.
Thank you, Heather. Yeah, we're a little bit over time. We only had one question come in, so I'm actually going to ask Alicia because it's a multi question. I think it might take a little time, and we're kind of tight for time with another appointment coming on or another webinar. So if it's okay, Alicia, if you'll send me an email at help@virginiasbdc.org, and Heather, if you're okay if I send that to you to answer, would you be okay with that?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, like I said, it's a multi-point. It's not a quick answer, I don't think. So that would be great. Alicia, you'll get the information with that email sent to you as well. So thanks so much. Heather, thank you. I would say last words of wisdom, but you've given us so many words of wisdom. I think we'll leave it at that. If you're okay with that today. And I want to thank everyone who joined us as well today and remind you you're going to receive an email with a link to this recording. If you would like to sign up for upcoming webinars or access recorded webinars, please visit virginiasbdc.org/training. These resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors. You can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiasbdc.org or via our website. And we hope to see you all next week for our follow-up session. Take care, everyone.